Hello everyone. In the previous session, we have learnt about the different methods that are associated with the string object that we have created. We have also learned about how you perform the necessary data cleaning activities using those methods. In this session, let's focus on what exactly is string indexing and what is string formatting. So this particular slide that you're looking at is nothing but it's a variable that we have defined which is called as my underscore string, which holds certain text value, which has character data associated. So that is learn AI. And there is an index value associated with every single value or every single character that's represented in as part of my string here. So 0th index is associated with the character L, the first index is associated with E, second with A, and so on. So the index position starts from 0 here in Python, specifically for strings. All right. Just like we have positive indices that we have represented for every single character that's represented here, we also have negative indexes that are associated with the same text or same character data or same string data that we have here. So the negative indices are represented in the reverse order. So your positive indices are represented in this direction, your negative indices are represented in this direction, but it starts with -1 all the way till -7. Now, how do you reference this particular value of L here? I reference the value of L with a subscript notation and provide the index value within the subscript. And that would point to, or that would print out the data L here because you are referencing to only the 0th index. If you want to reference to two different indices values, that is, you want to print out L and E together, then obviously I would need to go about referencing 0:3 within the subscript, right? Or 0:2 to be precise, 0:2 within the subscript. So the second index is ignored, but it would print out L and E. If you are writing my underscore string 0:4, then obviously the fourth index is ignored and the rest of all other values L, E, A, R is printed out. So you are always ignoring the index position that's denoted on the right hand side of this column, but rather printing out all the indices that are lesser than whatever the index value that you are observing here, right? That's how it works. You can also reference this particular data or this particular character called L by providing my underscore string and by providing the negative index -7 because -7 is pointing to L here, isn't it? In a similar manner, if you are providing -1 within the subscript, it's referencing the character I here and I would be printed out. And this is how indexing works in strings. You can slice the data and print the sliced data that you had. You can also point to a specific character within the string that you have defined. You can also take strides of data that we are essentially going to look at when we actually work on Python. That's okay. Let's work on Python now. Let's open the Python notebook and let's define mystr and call it as learn AI. Of course, mystr and subscript 0 would provide me the first character within this particular string that we have defined, isn't it? So similarly, what about providing a colon 3 here? So this would print out LEA. As I mentioned to you earlier, if you are providing 0:3 within the subscript, it's going to print out all the characters except the third index, isn't it? So 0, 1, 2 indices values are being printed out now. So LEA is being printed out. Similarly, you can reference the character value L by providing a negative index that is -7. You can reference the very first or the very last value that's present within the string, that is I, either by using the negative index that is -1 or using the positive index 6 here. Both of them would provide the same thing. You can also look at printing that value using the negative index. You can very well validate that whether it's true or not, whether whatever value that you get using the positive index and whatever value that you get using the negative index, whether they match or not. If they are matching, then obviously you would return true. If they are not matching, then you would return false. For instance, if I change this value to -2, then obviously they are not the same. Since your negative -1 is not equal to whatever value that you are finding with your positive index 6 here, right? You can take a slice of data as we have discussed earlier. We also can take a slice of data which is not starting from 0th index. You can very well go about printing the data or printing the character values starting from index 2 and it ends at index 5, but index 5 is not being considered here as I mentioned to you earlier. So 2 to 5 would always produce 2, 3 and 4 values. So you always ignore whatever index that you are providing on the right hand side of this column, right? So 2, 3 and 4 gets printed out. That is nothing but A, R and N. And that got printed out. So this is how you consider slices of the character data that's represented in the string and also reference a particular character value within the string that you have defined either by using positive indices or negative indices. You can reverse a particular string by providing colon -1. So the string is reversed now. If you do not want to provide -1, it would not reverse the string, but it would print the string as is. That's the whole idea. If you are providing single column, then also it will print the whole string. If you are providing double column, then also it will provide the whole string as such. If you want to reverse, then you start from negative index. That is, start from -1 so that you are reading the values from -1 till all the negative indices are exhausted here. So I, A, N, R, A, E, L would be read and printed out in this specific case. So this is how indexing is done. How do you collect strides of data? You collect strides of data starting from position 0 till length of my string, all right, and strides of 1 or strides of 2, right? So strides of 2, basically what it does is you are starting from 0 and ending till 6th position here. So L gets printed out first because I have provided the stride value as 2 here. So the subsequent value gets ignored, that is this gets ignored and this gets printed out and again this gets ignored and index 4 value gets printed out and so on, right? So you print out LANI. So LANI gets printed out. So if you change this particular value to 1, so all the data, all the character data that you have gets printed out. If you change this to 3, then there are 2 different positions that get ignored from starting position 0. This is how it works. So what about immutability? We have already learned about what immutability is, and we have learned that strings are immutable in nature, right? Whatever string that you have, for instance, my string is what we have already defined, and you reference a particular index value that is L, you cannot go about updating it with any different value. So it says that string object does not support item assignment. Obviously, you cannot update any given character within the string because strings are immutable as such. But rather, we have discussed that we can override a particular string. Even if we are overriding the value for a particular variable, for a particular string variable, you're not doing that in place. What do I mean by in place here? So we had defined this myString variable with something called learnAI. I also go about redefining this particular myString with something called machine learning. All right. And let me print what is the memory location of myString right after initializing it with learnAI, and what is the memory location right after overriding it with machine learning. You observe that these are pointing to 2 different memory locations here, right? So the memory location where my string here is getting stored is different from what we observe after we override my string with a different value, isn't it? So this is not in place. This is not in place. So initially you had my string pointing to a specific memory location which held the value of learnAI at a specific given memory location, right? And later you have redefined this myString value with a different value called machine learning. So here your pointer gets changed to this new memory location rather than pointing it to old memory location. It's not overriding the memory location as such, but the variable name or variable which was pointing to a different memory location earlier now is pointing to a different one altogether, just because strings are immutable. If you were supposed to override the value, my string would have pointed to the same location, but this time around, instead of learn AI, you would have had a value of machine learning, but that did not happen, right? Just because strings are immutable in nature, you cannot mutate the contents of a string as such. So that's what immutability is. Please always remember that strings are immutable in nature. You cannot mutate the contents of a string. All right. So what exactly is string formatting? We already have learned about different formatting rules earlier in one of our previous sessions when we have looked at what are the different ways in which you can print the output. But however, we are going to revisit that in this particular exercise. So actually, let's define a formatted string like we did earlier. So for instance, I am providing a customer name here as Tom. All right. Let's write a formatted string. F here stands for formatted string. I can say that customer name is, and within curly braces, I'm providing the variable name so that it gets evaluated. Whatever is present within this curly braces gets evaluated. And we find that name has got a value of Tom and Tom gets printed out in place of name. So you can also perform some operations like we have discussed earlier in order to replicate the value n number of times, whatever n value that is, right? So what I am trying to say here is you can evaluate any given expression within this particular curly braces that gets evaluated and that gets printed out. It's not necessarily the variable name always. It could be any conditional expression as such which gets evaluated and printed out in turn. Perfect. So this is one way of representing the strings here, one way of formatting the strings and produce an output. All right. We can also have something like this. So name is Tom and the total amount that he must have paid is like $432. And now let's write a formatted string saying that customer name is name within the curly braces and the total amount he or she paid is total underscore amount. This is more or less the same practice that we have done earlier, right? So we can alter this process here by providing percentage s because this is a string, and this one with percentage d because this is an integer now. Of course, I can open up another parenthesis here and provide what this string value could have and what this integer could be. This integer could be nothing but total amount, right? So it says that string object is not callable. So we need to provide percentage here, which we missed out. And now instead of percentage, in place of percentage s, you observe Tom. In place of percentage d, you observe the value, the integer value that we are trying to map. So name here gets mapped to percentage s that we have provided. Total amount gets mapped to percentage d that we have provided. This is yet another way of formatting the strings that we have. We have also seen another few more sophisticated means of doing the same thing, like probably looking at using dot format, and instead of percentages you have looked at providing index value within the curly braces. Instead of providing this value here, you have also looked at providing another index value, and you have mapped what could be the values pertinent to this particular index value and what could be the value pertinent to this particular index value here. So obviously name gets mapped to 0 and total amount gets mapped to 1 here. And when you run this, of course, you are going to get the right output here. Okay. So you're not supposed to provide F here because that's no longer F string because you are performing or formatting it again here, right? You cannot format it twice, isn't it? So and hence you need not provide F here. If you are providing F here, that won't format it correctly, but rather since you are using format function here, you need not redo that F again here, right? So these are the various ways in which you can format a particular string. What about having a particular string like this, like customer purchased groceries? I want to mark this within a particular double quotation. And of course, this won't get printed out, right? This is an invalid syntax. You cannot have a double quotation within double quotation. Of course, you can go about having single quotation within double quotation, which works perfectly fine. But there could be cases where I want to represent this within double quotation rather than single quotation, right? How do I go about it? I can provide a slash here and a slash here right before closing that particular quotations, and this would print just fine. And this is what we expect. And you can go about removing this space, and that will be more legible now. So these are the various methods or various practices that one can use for formatting the strings. In fact, you can go about changing this to any of the name, right? Or any of the variable name. Just providing var underscore name here. And of course, I can go about providing what is var underscore name. So var underscore name could be groceries, right? And this should be an F string. It provides the same output now. I believe you have understood about how you perform indexing operations and how you actually format the strings that we have, and also understood well about the concept of immutability for strings. All right. That's all in this particular session, and thanks for watching.